Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. All right, good afternoon. I'm so pleased to be able to welcome you to Minneapolis for the 2023 Municipal Waste Management Association Fall Summit. My name is Dave Herberholz. I'm the Director of Solid Waste and Recycling for the City of Minneapolis, and I also serve as President for this year for the MWMA. I want to take a moment to acknowledge all the hard work that went into planning this event and say that I'm really pleased that you're able to join us here. I want to acknowledge a few people. Juby Headley. Where's Juby? And Judy Shahan. Kelly Kish from my staff, is our recycling coordinator who was involved with it. Aaliyah from my staff who was at the registration desk. And the whole executive committee that went into kind of building out the agenda, so thanks to all there. I was looking forward to this year's Fall Summit, setting a new standard for the beginning of a new model for our coming together, and hopefully the engagement that we all have will get us to that point in the coming months and years. You'll hear me talk about it in the next couple of days. We couldn't do this work without the partnership of you all and our member associations that are involved here. So I want to thank the following companies and organizations for sponsoring the summit this fall, and they are listed alphabetically: Big Truck Rental, Burns & McDonnell Engineering Company, Helvey and Associates, New Gen Strategies and Solutions, LLC, Rayrick Pacific, Republic Services, Routeware, Rubicon, Strategic Materials Incorporated, and Waste Management. So let's show some appreciation for all. Yeah, thank you very much. And you'll get a chance to hear from and meet all of our sponsors over the next 2 days. And several of them are featured in some of the Fall Summit agenda, and others are exhibitors out in the hall. So before we get this going, 2 special features of the Fall Summit that I want to call to your attention. First, in our efforts to reduce waste and paper use, we have moved over the past couple of years to an app-based agenda, as you all see, instead of paper. You should have received an email late last week with information. If you haven't, I think Aaliyah at the registration desk can help you with that. We'll provide the agenda and how to access and use it. If you have any questions, you can also see Juby or Paolo that is in the bag. Second thing I want to mention is something that we've been doing a lot longer, which we call a sponsor bingo. So when you've checked in at registration, you should have received a bingo card. Did that happen? Okay. All right, so we're going to fix that. So when you do get a bingo card, I was going to say I didn't see a bingo card. But the bingo card is going to have logos of all the sponsors on it, and you go and get a chance to talk with them, have them check it off, and at the end of the day tomorrow, you'll submit all those, and we'll have a random drawing there for an iPad. So more to come on that. This evening, we're going to be over at Britt's Pub, which is right kind of adjacent, a block and a half from here for a reception. Republic Services will be sponsoring that, and we're going to be doing lawn bowling there, so it'll be interesting. And then tomorrow evening at the closing reception, that's when we'll take all the cards and draw for the iPad. Finally, we are once again presenting this year's Fall Summit both in person and it's live streamed, and we're recording many of the sessions and we'll make them available on the MWMA webpage at the conclusion of the Fall Summit. So please keep in mind, especially during the Q&A, we're going to want to capture your question so that the recording is that much more logical and meaningful to the folks that are joining real time back home and folks who might want to watch this session in the future. So I'll move on to our agenda for the afternoon. As you probably already know, MWMA has long been active in promoting extended producer responsibility, particularly through our parent organization, the United States Conference of Mayors, for the last decade at least, for mattresses, electronics, and other hard-to-recycle materials. Our goal, which is somewhat of a theme throughout this afternoon's presentations, actually is that our cities and municipalities should not bear the undue financial burden of handling or remediating the fallout of residual impacts from products and processes created and produced by manufacturers. We're pleased to be joined today by Scott Castle, founder and CEO of the Product Stewardship Institute, otherwise known as PSI, and author of Perspectives on Product Stewardship. For over 2 decades, Scott and PSI have been developing model legislation and providing support and guidance to governments, academic institutions, nonprofits, and businesses to ensure that products are responsibly managed from the design phase through end of life. Today, Scott will provide us with an overview of EPR legislation across the country, as well as talk about trends in legislation and opportunities to do more in the EPR arena. Scott, we're so pleased to have you with us today. So please begin. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dave, and it's great to be here. Everyone that's working on waste, at least I felt like I was through my 40 years of working on waste issues, is you really feel like you have kind of the blues, right? And especially after lunch. So I'm going to just mimic, how you feel right now. I'm going to switch to the mic and come on down here. And so where's Juby? Is he still outside? Well, I'm going to go through presentation here, but I like questions. I don't know how you've been doing it before. The other thing, can they take questions during? Or do you want me to wait till the whole thing ends? Whatever I want. All right, I'm going to just play harmonica the rest of the time. All right, it's great to be here. Well, who is the Product Stewardship Institute? We are a national nonprofit organization based in Boston, although now everything's virtual. We've been working to reduce the health and environmental impacts from consumer products all across the life cycle of the entire waste stream for over 2 decades. Our board of directors are comprised of state and local government officials. Many of you here, and Sarah Reeves here was on our board at one point, and some others maybe as well. And everyone else is a partner. So we have funding half from public and half from private. And you can see it's everyone else. It's the companies, organizations, environmental groups, universities, and international governments. So we take the best practices on extended producer responsibility from Europe, Canada, particularly, and bring them here to the United States, and then work with state and local government officials to support your efforts. So it's not like we have a model and here it is and we want it to bring it in. All the state and local governments have been the bedrock of EPR in the United States for over 2 decades. So it's your colleagues that have done this and continue to. For those not familiar with the terms, product stewardship is sort of the high term, and then it's really about producers taking greater financial and management responsibility. And product stewardship is divided up into mandatory programs and voluntary programs, which we work on both. We work all across the United States, even in Missouri, Oklahoma. We worked in Nebraska. We're working in Alaska now, Hawaii, other states all across the country, because we want to build the support for EPR, build the capacity for EPR. That's one of the main things we've done over the past 2 decades. Well, the mandatory program, one of the biggest ones, is extended producer responsibility. So what this means is fairly simple. The attention was focused on the producer, air, water, land emissions for a long time, and then now we're changing. We're going upstream to the producer, into mining, how cotton is grown, worker safety, upstream, and all the way downstream. Where's the material going? Call that responsible end market. So it's the whole breadth related to consumer products. Why EPR? So I've taken this from a passage in the book that I just was printed. I do have a couple of copies here, but it's so good to feel it because it's been 4 years to write that. And so I want to read you what it boils down to for me. We have outgrown the era of municipalities being solely responsible for recycling. A paradigm shift is needed. The concepts of extended producer responsibility and product stewardship play a significant role in bringing our consumption of natural resources and emission of greenhouse gases back into balance with the Earth's ability to absorb those impacts. And realize that what EPR is about is to reduce climate change. It is one of the unrecognized segments of it. It's being more recognized now, but lowering the greenhouse gas emissions is a huge component of what we're all doing. Another angle to take about this is to think municipal waste management at one point was revolutionary. You know, it's like, boy, have municipalities to clean up this stuff in some organized fashion and maybe take it outside of town or stick it in a landfill. Then it was line landfills. Then it was waste to energy plants. Well, voluntary recycling was another revolutionary idea. I'm sure many or most of you were volunteers and doing recycling like I was. I convinced with many people of the city of Philadelphia way back in the early 80s to have the first municipal recycling coordinator and program in Pennsylvania. And that was great for a while. And then we kind of hit an end of that. It wasn't tenable anymore. It was just too much for volunteers. Well, municipalities funded and managed these recycling programs. Not all, but many municipalities, many of you have started those programs, continue those programs. And now you're feeling the same way. You're feeling like it's enough already. It is too much. It's a burden. The recycling rate has leveled off. The forces are just so great with contamination, the cost, the changes in the contract prices, the worldwide markets of all these things. It's changed so much, and we need help. And that is where producer-funded and managed programs come in. It's not like the whole responsibility is hoisted off into producers. It's a whole system. EPR is a system of accountability, primarily with producers. They're the ones who put these products on the market and the packaging onto the market, and the financial signals have to come back to them so that they can then change along the way and give them that incentive to do it. So here's where we started in 2000 when our organization was founded. And you see there's 8 laws, including one in Minnesota, on one product, rechargeable batteries. They're now old laws, but that was it, 7 states. And now we have 135 EPR laws passed on 18 products in 33 states. And a lot of people are working on this right now. It's an amazing change. You can see the activity, not surprisingly, the Northeast, the West Coast, and the Great Lakes area. And here's another depiction of the steady increase in EPR laws being enacted. These are all the product categories we work on. It's over 25. Not all of them have EPR laws, but more and more each year are passing. And it's everything from the toxics, mercury thermostats, fluorescent lamps, rechargeable batteries, all the way to bulky waste, mattresses, carpet, and then there's pharmaceuticals and medical sharps, and then there's packaging. And that's really what's burst open over the past couple of years. So just in 2023 alone, there's been 53 bills that have been introduced, 15 products, and there's been 4 new laws. And HHW, yay, Vermont. HHW was the first EPR law in the country in Vermont. Yes, the states do compete. There's a question like, who is Oregon or Maine? You know, which one like passed it in the legislature, but the governor signed it first, you know, in Maine. So the Oregonians are like, you know, upset about that. But they were the first to pass it in the legislature. Tires also in Connecticut, it's the first one. These are old laws. They're advanced disposal fees or just old laws that have run their course. And this is a new law in Connecticut. And then there's batteries and paint. So I'm just going to get a little water. And that's my New Jersey accent, water. My Camden friend over here now. So elements of effective EPR laws. So we, over the past 2 decades, working with our state and local government officials, have come up with a way to develop bills. And it's proved very effective. I say it educates, and then it also educates all the different stakeholders, first the government officials and then everyone else. And then it takes that education and brings people together over how to put the pieces of a bill together. I do go into this in extensive detail in the book, and I have a separate chapter, case study on packaging, also batteries and paint. Where we go over this. So for example, covered materials for packaging. Well, that could be the primary packaging, let's say a shampoo bottle. So it's that plastic bottle usually. It could be the secondary packaging, the box which that shampoo comes in. Tertiary packaging, the box of boxes, and so forth. And those are usually what's included in most of the packaging. Okay, then it could also include, paper products, another 10% of the waste stream, with packaging being 30%. And then it can have single-use plastics and other materials. So those are kind of the way, and then we walk through with the state, you know, what they would like to do. Covered entities, where these are collected from. It's usually tied to the covered materials and products. If you're collecting from commercial, into your normal routes as a hauler, recycler, you will have that as a covered entity. You will continue to do that. It's just one way. Multifamily, is it you know, up to 5 units or more than that? And we go through all of this in detail, but conceptually first. It's not with all the little details of the law. It's conceptual. Then collection and convenience. Well, how do we make this convenient for all consumers? And an equity lens on it, which I think is new and necessary. Responsible party, how do you define which are the producers? Well, usually it's the brand owner, which is also the manufacturer in the same way. It could also be a licensee or the manufacturer, or it could be the first importer into the state. All of it is generally the first time sale in the state, who's done that? And there's ways of doing this, and that is the responsible party. That's extremely important. And each one of these is like the producer responsibility organization. It's a way to organize the producers. They have an association, if you're familiar with Call to Recycle or Paint Care. Those are PROs, single ones. Well, they're gonna have it on packaging as well, and it organizes and helps the compliance for all of those producers. Funding inputs, well, how is the money put into the pot that the PRO then allocates under the funding allocation? What's that going for? It's going for collection and processing, education, and even state government oversight, and lots of other things as well. So each one of these buckets is a way to piece together a piece of legislation, whether it's packaging, whether it's paint, whether it's pharmaceuticals or medical sharps. Speaking of paint, so paint is usually one I just wanted to show because it was one of the first products with electronics that we worked on in the early 2000s, and the paint industry supported it. There were 80 million gallons of leftover paint. It was over 600 million. I think this is a low estimate now. I think it's probably up to near $1 billion to manage all the leftover paint. It's 10% of all paint purchase goes leftover, and so it's a lot of money. And this is the biggest HHW collection item by cost in most municipalities. And so we went to the paint industry and asked them if they would engage with us. And they said yes. They wanted to have one arena to negotiate, develop a model bill, and then work with all the states. There was pressure by Minnesota and California to legislate, and they took that off the table, and we negotiated. And that then turned into, we were able to mediate a model. We had a whole rollout. Oregon, I have to say Minnesota, was the first state. The governor at the time, Tim Pawlenty, vetoed the legislation twice in a row, which was very disappointing. We lost 18 months on that. But Minnesota didn't give up and came back and passed that legislation, one of 11 states and Washington, D.C., to have it. And it's harmonized. So when people say, when the industry says, oh, government, you're not harmonizing the packaging or you're not harmonizing this, it's, in my opinion, it's mostly because they don't come to the table to negotiate and they're not one as an industry. That's what happened with the electronics. So we'll get to that in a second. The electronics industry was not together as an industry. Our government, state and local governments were. We were the whole range of things we would agree to, and they wouldn't. And that's why there's 25 some odd different bills. So lots of good things have taken place. Savings of money, recycling 72% of leftover latex paint and so forth. How many here are from states that have not passed the paint care or the ACA law? Okay. Well, you should consider this because the paint industry is fully supportive of it. And they have put in a bill that we're working with them on in Missouri. And it's the second year of that, and it's gotten some traction. And so, there's opportunities, I think. It did pass in Colorado a number of years ago as well. These are the laws just from a map perspective. And Illinois just passed theirs last year or this year. All right, mattresses. Lots of them, lots of the mattress much of the mattress can be reclaimed. And so, at the invitation of the Connecticut Product Stewardship Council, local governments, and the Connecticut State Environmental Agency, DEEP, we mediated an agreement with them, as well as even Covanta at that time initiated this with us to get the mattresses out of the waste stream. And we did a stakeholder dialogue, came out with a model bill, and that is why Connecticut, California, and Rhode Island started with the very similar, and again, there you go, from Rhode Island to Vermont, you know which states to pick. And so those three were very similar. And then in Oregon last year, the Oregon State Environmental Agency, DEQ, and Metro Oregon hired us to sort of do an upgrade of that bill, and we then facilitated with the mattress industry, and I call it EPR 2.0 because it was significantly better. And again, lots of results here. Connecticut in even 1 year jumped to 63.5%. And here's the laws. 2 little states in the Northeast and 2 big states in the West Coast. All right, I just wanted to bring up another concept. It's funding mechanisms. Most of the bills on these, 18 products are what we call cost internalization. That means that there's goals in the in the law that say you industry have to meet this recycling rate by this amount of time, or these convenience standards over time this year, and annual reporting and evaluation and other things. And so it's up to them to figure out how to fund this. And that really was the original concept, and I think it's maybe the best concept where the government's really, they want to release their management responsibility to some degree. They always maintain an oversight. I want to say that clearly. They always maintain oversight, evaluation, and enforcement capabilities. But that's with the cost internalization. You can see all the products there. Consumer fees was on paint, mattresses, carpet, and tires, and those in red here, and that's consumer funding the cost of it, like 75 cents for paint would go to the retailer pays that 75 cents to the producer puts that into a fund managed by the PRO Paint Care, and they use that to contract with collectors and processors and education and state oversight funding. So that's basically how that works. All right, electronics. So lots to recover. I think we're learning more and more with electronics, as well as even batteries, that there's a lot of valuable material there, all right, and strategic importance as well, ending up wasted. So we do have 23 EPR laws. California's an advanced recycling fee. It's a little bit different. We don't even consider it EPR, but it has worked quite well. And they're just all different laws, again, because the electronics industry was not together as an industry, and the states were doing whatever they could get politically. And here, back to the origins in 2000, and Garth, are you here? There you are in the back. Garth Hickel was with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, now with RRS. And he and I spent an awful lot of time together at these NEPC dialogues, working with the industry to, see if we can get on the same page with one another. Well, we got pretty far, and all the concepts that we were able to discuss during that time then were kind of released into the states, the ideas and the concepts for how to develop legislation early on, and California was the first in 2003 with their ARF, but Maine was the first cost internalization, followed by Washington, Oregon, Connecticut, and then 23 states followed. Some of them are very good laws, some of them need to be revised, and other ones are really poor laws that some put in by the industry themselves, like Dell. It was called the Dell Bill to just make sure nothing else happened there, and it was part of their strategy and their voluntary agreements that they had with collectors. I'm going to do the batteries here, and then I'll stop and see if there's any questions at this point. And I do have some more. I'm going to get to packaging. It's a big one. So U.S. battery EPR laws, 10 states. Now here, I wanted to just kind of switch because we've now entered a new place with batteries. Lithium-ion battery fires is huge, as you all know. People are dying, worker safety, the fires have destroyed buildings. It's been multi-million dollars of lost value here. So the recyclers are real interested in a change. The battery industry is interested in working with us wholeheartedly here on a model. And so it's hit a new place. Back into 2014, Vermont was the first state to pass a primary battery bill. Those are those alkaline disposables that were there. The rechargeable is nationwide voluntary program by the industry. It only collects like 12 to 14%, and a lot of free riders, but it was there. They went after the primary. That was the first. Then DC came in and said in 2021, and we worked closely with them, they brought in the rechargeable batteries, the primary, and these are the portables, the small batteries. Well, then California came in and they said, okay, well, we're going to do the DC thing and the Vermont thing, and we're going to add to that e-mobility devices. And those are the e-bike batteries and hoverboards and scooters and things like that. Well, Washington came in and said, well, we're going to do, what California's done and the others have done, and we're going to take it another step and do a study on what we call large format batteries. And these are battery energy storage systems, which are, what I understand is our homes will be powered by them, EVs, and our entire homes will have a unit that might be, half the curtain over here or maybe bigger, larger battery storage, and it's a way to bring us into the clean energy revolution. Also EV batteries, and so that's their sort of next stride. There's a lot of other states that we're working with on the batteries. It's going to keep going and move forward as the types of batteries, the lithium-ion batteries, are in more and more products. We're going to see more and more changes. In the federal government, there's been a lot of billions of dollars that has been provided to recyclers of batteries and many others. And they've said that they want a federal framework for battery EPR. We haven't seen any movement yet, but we're certainly hopeful that that will come sometime soon. Okay. Just a couple of things here. I mentioned there's coalition support. And this is an analysis that we do on every product because we can't be in every place on every product all at the same time. But there's a lot of opportunities. The battery brands are on board, the recyclers, the governments. You've got fire departments. There's an existing battery EPR model that our organization has honed over the past long time. And then British Columbia is also expanding. So we're seeing it come from the north, as well as Europe is also moving in this direction. So all of this together goes, this is a no-brainer. Batteries are going to be, into EPR. There's a lot of interest in bringing these in, capturing the materials. One of the things that the EU, they have a revised battery regulation. See on the bottom, it's just one example of the material recovery targets that they have for strategic purposes. They want to reclaim these valuable materials in the EU. They don't want them going to other countries and then figuring out how to mine them, and to cut deals with countries that they can't rely on. So 90% recovery for cobalt, copper, lead, and nickel by December 31, 2027. And that's one of like 20 that they have. Challenges, expanding scope, expanding use of chemistries. We don't want to get in the way of innovation. We want to make sure that the policy can accommodate all these changes. And then the collection and convenience standards are going to be different. You have a portable battery, you have it in your pocket, you go in, you return it to well, I was thinking Radio Shack used to be, but lots of these, retail stores, and then now you have e-bike batteries. What are you going to do about that? It's a whole new infrastructure for this, and not every store that sells is equipped to take them back, and so there's a lot of things to work through. I'm going to pause here for just a second and Dave's going to grab the mic and moderate, just in case anyone's really hostile.
If you have a question and you're in the front half of the area, just go to the microphone, standing microphone, and I'll go to the back for other questions.
So what differentiate your organization from the National Stewardship Action Council?
A lot. Well, first, we do work nationally. Names aside for organizations, we work in all the states. And it's Heidi Sanborn and maybe one other person in the board. Heidi used to work for us at PSI for 3 years before the California Product Stewardship Council and so forth. She's done a lot of good work in the field. What I understand is Heidi's takes a different approach that we do in the sense of having a type of bill or law that she has in mind that she will bring into a state. And our organization goes into a state and works with the state and local governments to see what they want in that state and other stakeholders as well. So, you know, I don't want to, I think that's probably the biggest, but they're not working nationally. Maybe a couple of states here and there on various things in terms of spreading her expertise that she has on working on EPR for a long time. And we're both 501s. Well, we're a 501c3. She's a 501c6 or something. It's a lobbying. She does lobbying. We don't do very much lobbying. We're more of a technical expert that's brought in to legislators, and we then explain why things are happening the way they are and what the options are. So we consider ourselves a technical expert that's come in. We're not a lobbyist. She's a registered lobbyist. Other questions? Come on up to the mic.
Quick question on the local impacts. I was just trolling the website while you're looking. Do you have any environmental impacts to not recycling the materials or not having the producer responsibility? In particular, I was looking at in the southern states, you know, where I'm from, you know, one law in one state or one law in two states. Like in tires, there's an environmental impact. There is a cost to the solid waste departments. I think that would be tremendously helpful to my colleagues if they could look and see where they can see what these costs are system-wide when they have to go out and pick up these materials illegally.
So first of all, which state are you from, if I may ask?
Oh, the accent didn't give me away. Texas. With a whole lot of Arkansas.
I don't like to make assumptions, you know.
Okay, that's okay. Well, you didn't say England, so that was good.
Well, we've worked in Texas too, and there's been a paint bill that's been introduced there in the past, and I could see, you know, it depends upon the state agency. You know, it's conservative. So is Missouri. So is Oklahoma, and if the industry is supporting it, that usually means an awful lot to a red state. Means a lot to everybody, frankly. But so that's one. So I think your question might be like, what have we sort of developed? What the costs, the impacts from managing these materials are, and I'd say that that's what annual reports do. So we have done that a number of times. We did that in Connecticut. They hired us to do 4 of their products over the past like 5 years. That was a number of years ago, and it was a nice sort of a litany here of the benefits of it. You know, the amount of materials collected, the money that was saved. You can convert it into greenhouse gas savings and so forth. But you're absolutely right. The data that show the impacts are extremely important. And my experience, you know, having been the waste policy director in Massachusetts and also trying to get data from states, is it's really hard. You know, state agencies, for them to have all the data for this, but I do think it's one of the main functions for a state agency to show the importance of whatever bill that they want to move towards. If it's paint, then there's that, and we can certainly help with other states that have done that, or whether it's I don't know, mattresses or carpet or pharmaceuticals or medical sharps, whatever it is. There's data that we have. We develop research. We always do a research report before moving through on any bills, so that we know the lay of the land. We know, and we have a whole method there for figuring it out. It's like, what's the problem here? And we go through those with our state and local agencies, and then we bring that out to other stakeholders. What is the problem? You can't move to a solution if you don't agree on the problem as a stakeholder group. So we spend time on that. And then the goals, which comes off the problem, but you have to articulate those. And then there's barriers to achieving those goals, which often are regulatory. The federal government is doing this, or like pharmaceuticals. There was a barrier for the retail pharmacies to collect. So our organization had a public-private partnership with many, Stericycle and Covanta and many other companies, and it took 6 years to change the Federal Controlled Substances Act. And that was a barrier to achieving the goals that we had established, and now retail pharmacies can collect. So it's sort of a method here. If you break it down in terms of the problems, I like to think about it as like somewhat reductionistic. I mean, I take in a lot of information myself, and the way I like to focus is just to like pull it out and say, okay, where are we in the sphere? How do we focus on this problem? And it's one method that may be helpful for you as well. Thanks for the question. Any other question? Kelly.
Sure. All right, I have 2 questions. First, when you said the battery manufacturers are coming together to help develop a bill, does this include the large format, the e-mobility, all of those, alkalines, all of the rechargeables, or who specifically is in that group of battery industry coming together?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the Portable Rechargeable Battery Association, they're members. There's now 3 associations and not 4. So it's made it a little easier to move to, and some people have retired in the sphere who were roadblocks in the past, which is making it easier. The electric vehicles, those can be made by other companies rather than the PERBA folks. And then there's the BESS systems also, that like Tesla is a manufacturer, and they like to be the one player often. So it gets complicated. So that's one of the things that we're working through right now, is to see how that takes place. And we're doing a dialogue in Connecticut on the best systems with the Connecticut Green Bank there that does investments in clean energy technology. And we've gotten good cooperation from many of the stakeholders, but it will take some more conversation.
Okay, thank you.
And your second question?
Yes, my second question is, in any of these conversations, or maybe this is kind of putting a little kernel in your ear to bring up in these conversations, is since lithium batteries in particular have had such a negative impact on the waste industry as a whole, is there any consideration for funding within the specific state to help build back capacity that may have been lost due to lithium batteries? Whether that's a transfer station, a recycling facility.
You mean that have gone on fire and exploded? Or
Yes.
Okay.
I'm guessing not.
Not
so
that I know of.
Maybe
Not that I know of. It doesn't mean
throw
it's
that
not
in
happening.
there somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, good. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, the whole idea of EPR is that the producers are responsible. If the producers have those batteries and they don't do anything about it, then it kind of kicks into what is their liability, right, for those fires and for worker deaths. We and I again explored this in the book. Is the pharmaceuticals like the Sackler family and the opioids. It's horrible here, but they have responsibility. They've been held liable by the court system, and there's many other examples as well that we can do. Up in Massachusetts, the Woburn there was child leukemia from the dumping of waste. So I don't see this as any different, frankly. If companies know that what they're producing and putting on the market, and they're not kind of following it all the way through, and they know that their products are creating microplastics and it's creating problems, there will be class action lawsuits, I think, on this. So that's my take on this. Have studied this a long time, is that this gets into the field of liability, and no one wants to go there. No one wants these impacts, but that's the obvious conclusion. All right. Yes.
Hi there, Ashley from GBB. Given the audience, with this being MWMA, Conference of Mayors, I'm hearing a lot about state agencies and working with states. But what's the role of the municipalities with working with an organization like yours and the states to help bring these around? Are they asked to be on stakeholder groups, et cetera?
Absolutely. I would say that the local governments have been more of an engine for EPR than the states have in general. And this gets to the product stewardship councils. They're councils that our organization has formed by ourselves. Some have been formed by a group called the Product Policy Institute, now called Upstream in the past. Sometimes we've done it jointly together. And there are maybe a dozen of these product stewardship councils around the country where the local government, they're either all local government focus, which is what Vermont's is. Every district and solid waste district in Vermont is a member, and they hold monthly meetings, and we work with them and help bring our resources in, sometimes facilitating those meetings. But the local governments are the generators of the movement. And so thanks for your question. If that wasn't clear, maybe it was, maybe you knew the answer, but thanks for giving me that opportunity. Local governments are really the engine behind this, but states have such perspective on this and have more of a political lens about how to move this thing forward as well. So I'm going to go through the packaging slides here. And maybe you'll have some other questions as well. I really appreciate the questions that you had. Well, so we've been working, on EPR for 23 years. And here, we've been working on packaging for over 15 years. And, we were plowing the ground on EPR for all these other product categories. We made invitations to the industry, the producers and recyclers, waste management industry, for the entire 15 years. It was always some version of no. And then, why is so where have we gone with this? Now, we all know that there's 4 EPR packaging laws that have passed in the United States. It's burst open. We've had a lot of interest in EPR. Why? Because we had the green fence, China restricting the recyclables into their country. We didn't pay attention back then. And then came the national sword policy, and that really sent the shockwaves around. The recycling costs skyrocketed for municipalities. They went to the states went to the politicians, and that's how the bills have been introduced. But the reason we've succeeded is because the ground has been plowed on other product areas and on the concept itself of EPR. I want to give credit to the Natural Resources Defense Council and those who were working in 1996, I think it is, or 4. They introduced the first packaging EPR bill at the federal level, and it was the first one in the United States, even on state or local level, as far as I know. And it was like dropping a seed on pavement. It was a great seed, but there was no soil to fertilize it. And so now we have all of that, and there's lots of seeds being dropped and a lot of opportunity being generated. Plus, we had the global anti-plastic backlash, which brought in citizens and environmental groups, and it just really buoyed the whole movement. So here are the packaging laws. You have Oregon and California, Colorado and Maine that have passed these laws in the past 2 years. Illinois and Maryland in blue, they've passed what's called a needs analysis. So it's basically saying we're going to study this first. It's similar to a gap analysis, figuring out, well, what do we have in place right now? What are we collecting? Where are the facilities? What do we need? And what's the cost going to be? And how do we educate the public? So that's what those two have moved towards. And then you have bills in these other states in 23. This is just a snapshot. Many of the industry say, again, well, we have 4 different laws and they're all different. Well, they're not really all different. Again, boiling it down to the categories, we have been able to, put down some of the similarities. So yes, they were signed into law in the past 2 years. Packaging's covered in all of them. 2 of them have included paper products as well, like copy paper, publications, newspapers. Food service ware has also been covered in 3. Those are the single-use plastic, often food service ware that it gets thrown out. Multiple PROs possible. Maine's going to choose their one. Colorado and California will choose one for the first number of years, and then it's open afterwards, and Oregon's is open from the start. Producer funds the system. You can see most 100%, but Oregon's is a lower, but they also have a wider scan of products that they collect. Eco-modulated fees I'm going to get to in a minute, but it's interesting how that and the recycling targets are set. And it's one of 3 ways. It's either going to be in the statute, and that's, of course, is the most sort of definite. It's in the statute, at least if it's written well. It's in the statute, or some states like to develop it by rule, regulation, and some states don't. And some states want to give more leeway to producers, so they allow the producer, PRO, to propose it through a multi-stakeholder advisory council, and then the state has oversight authority. So it's one of those 3 ways, and the conversations are always the same. So I see so many similarities in this. It just depends upon the state function. Many more things can be harmonized, I want to say, but these are some of them, and then implementation date, you can see Oregon and Colorado will be the first ones. So I want to just speak here to make a point about 2 basic ways that systems are funded. It's a very busy slide, and I can go through it in 20 minutes, but we don't want to do that here. But the one thing I wanted to show is just up at the top left. Let's say you're a consumer. You buy a vase from Vases Inc. All right, Vases Inc. Then they have cardboard and they have like plastics that comes with it as well. Well, they have to pay. The dollar sign up at the top left, they have to pay per material into a fund that the PRO will manage. And the PRO will either fund the system one of 2 ways. Municipal reimbursement, which means that the municipalities keep their contracts for collection and processing, or the PRO is the one that does that contracting. The three of the states right now, Oregon, Maine, and California, are all municipal reimbursement. They have very well-established programs, and they don't want to change right now. They don't want to give up the responsibility. It's too much risk for them. And environmental groups forget, they don't want that to happen. They want something almost the other way. But municipal reimbursement is how those states are going to manage, and you can see the green goes to a collection truck and the sorting. But Colorado did not have much of a municipal recycling system at all, and Vermont has a little bit less of that as well. So it made sense in Colorado for them and it's everyone, multiple stakeholders agreed to this, for that state to have the producer come in, pay for, and establish the contracts with collectors and processors. And that's called full producer responsibility. It's kind of simple when you look at it that way, but a complicated slide, but a simple way to say there's just two basic ways of funding the system. All right, some terms you're going to hear. So eco-modulated fees, I'm going to start with this slide here. Again, I like to break things down as simple as possible. So there's really 4 different boxes here. One is the material itself. It's either plastic, paper, metal, glass, the amount of that material. Then it's the cost to the system. So if you have a valuable material that you're putting in and it has great markets in the back end and you're able to, make some revenue on the back end, it's going to be less of a fee to that brand owner who's using that material than one like maybe expanded polystyrene or, some of the black plastics like this, so film plastics, black plastics. They have less of a market, EPS, multi-layered packaging, like flexible packaging, multiple layers of plastic and other materials, paper, it could be aluminum and other things, and then packaging containing PFAS and toxics as well. So those are the challenging products that will come out of this system, and the whole idea behind this is for the eco-modulated fees to give financial incentive to the brand owners who are the ones who choose the packaging so that they will choose more sustainable packaging. And you can see that last variable here is where the eco part comes in. It's all the environmental factors of recycled content, carbon impact through LCA, life cycle assessments, litter contribution, toxics, and other things. And the 4 states are now working through this, and I'm able to be on calls with them, and they want to row in the same direction. They want to give each of the producers the same incentives, the same signals. That's going to be hard because their laws are written differently, and there's different circumstances. So that's going to be one of the big challenges that we see ahead. All right, responsible end markets. I mentioned, we're winding down. So I'm just going to say responsible end markets are what happens to the material. We're now looking at that. Advisory councils, I mentioned multi-stakeholder. That's where local governments, recyclers, waste management, environmental groups, and others that are not the PRO will have an opportunity. And the performance targets here I've mentioned as well. And lots of things can be harmonized. The covered materials list, that's what the producer has to pay for into the system. What is collected, recyclable, and compostable. The labeling, definition of producer, and recycled content standards. I'll just give you the concepts here, and I'm not going to go into them, but there's an issue of who owns the material once it's collected. The producers want it to bring back into their products to meet their recycled content goals, and the recyclers want it themselves. And use of existing infrastructure. There's language in each of the bills. They're very similar to the top one, that they're going to maximize the use of recycled, the existing infrastructure there, and how that happens, that's what we're going to be working through. We developed an agreement with the Flexible Packaging Association a number of years ago. They were the first ones to come to the table and agree on EPR, and many others have since. And here's the book that I have some copies of here, and I am at the end, so I don't know if I have any time for questions.
I think we've got a few minutes.
Did I wear you out? Hi.
So I appreciate the work that's being done in the 10, 12 states or the 4 or 5 that are really leading the way, but what's it going to take to get this to a national level? Where you can, let's take like paint, where you've got great traction, you've got the producers that are really on board with this. How do we get this to spread across the 50 states and make this, kind of a role model of how we can do this for multiple products?
We see what's going on in Congress, and I think that's the possibilities that we have. We've tried. We have worked on federal legislation on electronics, pharmaceuticals, packaging. I thought with electronics, with all the different states, it would, go national. Nope. So it's a good question. But, a lot of states don't like regulation, period. And so...
They like it when it's convenient for them.
Right, yes. So this is where I say maybe paint. Maybe paint would be a good one. The paint industry would have to put resources into lobbying Congress for that, and there's a possibility. Why not? It's always a first. Maybe the battery industry, since there's so much attention on that and billions of dollars being funneled from the federal government. So I'd love to see that. And, we've been working towards that, but states don't want to wait, right? States want to move ahead, and that's why they're doing that. We try our best to harmonize the efforts with the different states.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Susan, one final question. Susan.
Virginia's vase shop in Idaho, she makes leaded glass vases, and they're beautiful. But she is not interested in shipping to a state that has producer responsibility, because she would have to pay for the end disposal of that leaded glass, which is not recyclable. How do we make sure that we don't have a situation where companies say, y'all have a producer responsibility and I have to pay a certain amount in your state? I'm not going to ship. I'm not going to sell to your state.
Well, first of all, vases aren't, that was sort of the packaging for vases. It's not the vase itself. I would like to see it get there to all products, and I do think that that's where eventually it will go. It has to go there in order to reduce all the impacts that we see, toxicity and otherwise. So I would say if they're making that leaded product, and we all need to think what we're going to do with that leaded product at the end. I mean, I'm not buying things right now because of that, and sometimes I am, and it's a tough decision, and it shouldn't be up to the individual to have to solve this. So I'm not sure what the solution is, other than have more consciousness about what we're making, and if we're making a toxic product, then how that product hopefully will last generations and will, hand it down and won't be disposed of. But if it breaks or whatever, what do we do then? What's the cost of handling that product? And that's small. It's going to take a while to get there. We're up at the battery energy storage systems, the big ones that aren't going to be left somewhere for others to clean up. But it's a great question here. Ultimately, that's where we have to think and figure that out into the future. Thank you very much.
Very good.